Spills here for Rose! Oh my goodness! Where has that come from, Liam Rose?
Lovely ball. Oh! Capudano pulled it back heel out of his bag of tricks.
Here's Badolato with space and time. Badolato! Oh! How many goal of the season contenders will this man score in 25-26? Oh, Badolato out of absolutely nothing.
He says, no, I don't need anybody else. I've done this already. This is easy. This is my range. What a way to bring up your hat trick.
Jags inside, it's Kevin Romani! Kevin Romani has uncorked something truly special. Schreiber! Oh, goodness me! What a goal! It just gets better and better and better!
And anyone around the world who dials in to the A-League will be seeing world-class goals happening week in, week out.
Been a long time, I think, since we've seen so many goals from outside the box in one round in the A-League. Welcome back to Total A-Leagues. I'm Vince Regari. Tommy Orr is here again. Daniel McBreen still in jail / on jury duty. Alex Brosk also unavailable this week, so we continue to explore our depth. Very happy to have big Eric Partley on the desk.
Big upgrade.
I'm third choice.
Mate,
So,
you know, the best ability is availability, so that's...
I'm ready.
Good. It's been good to have you in the country and covering a lot of seeing your face everywhere at the moment, big man. A two-time A-League champion with still my personal favourite A-League team that there's ever been, the Barcelona era.
Most memorable goal maybe in A-League history too.
Oh, absolutely. So good they put I don't know if you remember, but they put the voice thingo on the back of the jersey once of the commentary.
Oh.
Must have been a nice honour.
It was, there was a soundbite actually of the
That's
highest
the word I was
ever
looking for.
recorded decibel level at Suncorp.
There you
back
go.
of the shirt, but I never received any of those shirts in the mail, so I'm still waiting, guys.
Interesting. Well, we've got a bit of an exchange coming later on with Brisbane Roar, so we'll add that into the mix. But boys, we'll start off by talking about our best moments from the round just gone. Thomas, you can kick us off. What did you like?
Can't go past the Alex Badolato hat trick, and I think that whole game in general, Newcastle's performance, to put 5 goals past Melbourne Victory, I think that was a real statement performance from them. I think the Jets fans should be excited. I think that was some of the most exciting attacking football we've seen, come out of the Hunter in a long time. So, I think that was my highlight for the weekend.
Eric, what do you got?
I would have agreed with Tommy for sure, but for the show, I think we've got to make up some stuff. No, I think honestly the Carlo Armiento finish for Wellington, and he's got 2 goals in 2 weeks. He hasn't really had a stable sort of A-League home. He's been overseas in Italy a little bit, and he's played for Brisbane as well, which makes it even more sweeter, scoring that goal in the last minute against the Roar in the 96th minute. And there's that little hint of offside with this one. I'm not sure that Eze is in a great position there, but maybe he's not obstructing the goalkeeper. Nevertheless, it's great to see Wellington Phoenix off to a good start. We know how good they were under Chiefy a couple of years ago, and I think they might be having a big season there.
First home win since December 2024 as well, so it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, indeed. Always good to see those pasty bodies celebrating as well at Wellington Phoenix games. It's nice to see. My moment of the round is, look, every cloud has a silver lining, and Sydney FC are not playing at their home. Allianz Stadium is getting redone for drainage, which means they've had to go elsewhere. And I'm not just saying this because I live like 2 or 3 tram stops away from Leichhardt Oval, but when Leichhardt Oval has this many people in it, it is an absolute vibe. Now, I know the facilities aren't top-notch and there's issues around traffic and all that sort of around that, but if you're sitting down on the couch watching a game of football and it looks like this and it feels like this, you got to be pretty happy. So I look forward to seeing what's possible for the A-League at Leichhardt Oval once it gets renovated as well. That's happening in the coming years, and hopefully some of those dingy old toilets and poor facilities out there get sorted out. But I'm a big fan as well. Big fan. Yeah. Not just because Inner West is best, but just for what it is. Boys, the big news, obviously, of the week. I can't believe we're 2 weeks into the season, already 2 coaches down, one before we started. And now, of course, David Zdrilic relieved of his duties by Perth Glory. Eric, in the pre-show meeting the other day, we were talking about, before this had happened, and we were wondering how long are they going to give him based on their starts of the season. They've regenerated the squad. The first couple of rounds, they've been tough games, haven't shown much. I was a little bit shocked by the timing. My call, and I think you agreed from memory, was round 5, but can you see why they've gone early?
I can see why they've gone early. I think if we sit here in a couple of months' time and we see Perth Glory inside the top 6 doing well, playing well, then there can be no arguments. But unless it's a financial thing, to pay him out of his 2 years that are remaining on his contract at the end of last year would have been a better situation. I think, making that decision early gives a coach 6 months in the pre-season, because they had a long off-season, the Perth Glory. Who steps in now and sort of, takes on that role? It's a very difficult place to step into. What I will say is that, playing 28% possession at home, getting pumped 4-0, whoever comes in now, it must look a lot better. They're going to try and keep the ball more. They're going to be a bit more robust. Probably go to a back 4, which wasn't suiting the team as well, but back 3.
Yeah, I think it is interesting, and you obviously just touched on it. But, in fact, now whoever's going to come in is going to inherit a squad that they had no input in. So they've kind of set themselves up already for a year that's going to be a year in transition, where the new coach, whoever that is, has to have, be afforded some time to implement his own ideas and these kinds of things. So, I think that the fact that they decided to keep him, for another season, like you said, if they did it at the end of last season, it wouldn't have been surprising. But I think that, some Perth Glory fans might feel that he deserved maybe 5 or 6 games, this season to kind of get up and running. But at the same time, you can't really argue. I think their defensive issues weren't resolved in the off-season, and at the end of the day, it's a results business.
I don't know if the fans or the club are going to cop a year in transition, and I think actually that's why maybe they've gone so early, because it's still retrievable 2 games in. I think the squad is pretty good by this season standards in the league. A couple of question marks. I'm not sure what's happened to Brian Kaltak sort of in the last little bit, but he's not the player he was when the Mariners won the championship. Hopefully, like another coach, a different voice behind the scenes can bring that sort of top form out of him. But I think, 2 games in and get the coach right. And I have a feeling this season is going to be so even though as well. Like if you're going to make the call, like harsh on Zdrilic, but I can see why they've gone early, because they can see themselves jumping up soon if they get this appointment right.
So, but playing devil's advocate to that, since Popper, there's been 5 coaches in the last 5 or 6 years. It's starting to look like it's not maybe the coach's fault or problem, the fact that this same kind of theme keeps happening. So I think that, there's kind of the sentiment that it might be a bit of a poison chalice job. So I think it's going to be hard for them to convince a good coach to go there.
And what's the goal here? They haven't finished above ninth, I think it is, since 2020, getting themselves into the final series. They haven't got their full squad available. Tom Lawrence is yet to be featuring in any games. Amos is coming back from injury. But the problem is now you've got Kucharski maybe with an injury. You've got Tags, their best top goal scorer, having an injury. Where and what sort of coach is going to come in here? The names that are getting thrown around, Kis Norbo, the JAs. There's a lot of options there to come in. But I just wonder for John Aloisi, is that going to be a job that he wants to touch?
Yeah.
We'll jump into that in a second. We're first going to hear from the Perth Glory CEO, Anthony Radic, talking about this decision and why it was made.
Yeah, well, I think the board felt last year, and the decision they made to keep David on was that, perhaps with the squad that he had at his disposal last year, it probably wasn't to the level that he deserved, or he didn't have that level of input into that team. So they've invested in the off-season to bring in a more experienced group, a higher quality squad. And the ownership have invested significantly in terms of facilities, in terms of additional support staff, and obviously building that squad recruitment-wise. So that was the basis for going into this season, and then what they've seen in the pre-season, and then what they saw on the weekend from a competitive point of view, I think was probably the most disappointing thing. And they felt that they couldn't see a path forward.
2 rounds harsh, but I think, and we were talking about this earlier, the pre-season was a bit of a disaster for Perth Glory as well. Like, I know they played AC Milan, who are a pretty good team, but to lose 9-0 shows a lack of resilience there that probably needed to be there. And I think there are other results disappointing. And I guess the club have taken not only the 2 games that have been played, but also what they've seen behind the scenes and their previous period into consideration here on this call. So basically, any coach that gets sacked this season until John Aloisi gets a job is going to be haunted by the spectre of John Aloisi.
But does he want it though?
That's a good question, because I can see both sides, because John's close with some of the people I think who run Perth Glory in terms of Ross Peligra is tight with Vince Grella, who's running the football in Catania, their sister club, you might say. But Vince Grella's connected to, I think, the agency that represents John Aloisi.
Yeah, right.
Obviously, Stan Lazaridis, former teammates for the Socceroos. So I can see that being a comfortable sort of marriage, and it's a risky one, but a good project for any coach to take on is to, can I get Perth Glory kicking again? But if I'm John Aloisi, I'm waiting for better options.
Well, that's right. And I think it's up to the club to, the names that they're throwing around, the likes of Patrick Kisnorbo, Nick Montgomery, you're hearing murmurings. These are all championship-winning coaches. Perth Glory at the moment is not a championship club or a club that looks like they're going to win it anytime soon. Obviously, they want to turn that around, but it's up to the club. And I think I have to give their hats off, obviously, seeing them front the media and explain the decision and having that transparency, because you don't always see that. I think they do deserve a bit of credit for that, but I think they are going to have their work cut out to try and convince a coach of that calibre to come into the job.
There's two things there, just to finish off. I think, JA, what's the contract situation with Western? Is he still getting paid to be waiting for that situation to resolve? And is he desperate to go into coaching straight away? And I think the answer is no. I think he doesn't have to wait and jump into a job like this. I think a coach like Paddy Kisnorbo, who maybe is really desperate to jump back into coaching, if that's the name they're floating around, I'd love to see someone different from overseas come in and maybe shake it up completely.
But that's a whole other risk.
That's another risk.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just a quick word on Zdrilic before we move on. It doesn't look great, this first job in his tenure, but it's easy to forget as well that John Aloisi had a pretty similar tenure at the start of his coaching career. Melbourne Heart didn't go well. A lot of people were questioning why'd you put him in? He's inexperienced, etc. And it's turned out that he's a pretty good coach and probably a Socceroos coach in waiting or one of the ones we expect to move overseas at some point soon. So just because this has happened at this point to Zdrilic doesn't mean anything about what he could become as a coach. Whether he returns to assistant coaching as he was previously or branches out on his own again, we don't know, but obviously we all wish him the best. Boys, Melbourne Victory, so they play Friday night, and what a game this is, and just huge pressure on both teams here at the moment. I mean, Melbourne Victory, that game against Newcastle, we're all in love with what we saw from the Jets and Badolato, which we'll talk about in a second, but Tommy, the Victory side of things, where did things go wrong for them, and what sort of, do you have any optimism for that changing?
Well, I spoke about it at the game. I was on that game, but I think that, the first 15 minutes, they actually started really brightly and they were putting Newcastle under a lot of pressure, but it was kind of the same themes as the first game they played against Auckland, that when they did win the ball in the front third, they didn't have enough kind of quality of conviction in the front third to punish the other team. And I think that the same thing happened in this game. And, Newcastle, once they went 1-0 up, got a lot of confidence from that and kind of took the game away from them. And I think that, it was a game of moments, and I think that Victory probably just didn't have enough in those moments.
Conviction and quality, interesting words, Tommy. You put the question to Arthur Dillers after the game, and let's hear his answer.
I thought in the first half there was maybe a little bit of lack of conviction in the front third and with the final pass. Is that something you're working on at training or something you're looking to address?
Yeah, maybe sometimes it's conviction, sometimes it's quality also. You in the front third you need quality, quality scores goals. And you can have the conviction sometimes without the quality and you're not going to score. So, you've got to marry the two together and you get, outcomes, and that's what they did tonight and that's what we didn't.
Eric, your translation there, what was he trying to say, or who was he saying it to?
I don't know if he knows what he was saying. It was, coaches coming and giving their time after a game is fantastic. It's emotional, they're reactive. You've got to remember, okay, the score was 5-2, but they still have managed to find 2 goals from somewhere. And I think, Jelassic and John Rowe are the ones that are driving that team forward. But you can't always just sit there and go, we'll blame the foreigners because they're not scoring. But I thought it was a strange scenario to re-sign someone like Santos. And obviously without having Bruno Fornaroli in the squad, does that bring out the best in Burgos having Reece on the bench? So have they got someone in there that's going to go and score goals? Because they need a goal scorer, and I feel like they haven't got it.
And Burgos, I think, has never scored more than 7 goals in a league season. So he's not this is a heavy shirt. Playing number 9 for Melbourne Victory, they're always, contenders for golden boots. And do they have enough quality in that front third to have someone to do that? I'm not sure. But I think it does pose a lot of questions because, obviously Alex Badolato was on their books last year. And for him to go and score a hat-trick against them was a little bit of a slap in the face because he didn't really get the opportunities to play. So, it's on one hand he's saying, we don't have the quality. But on the other hand, last year you had a player who just scored a hat-trick against him and showed immense quality. So I think it's a little bit of a contradiction there.
Yeah. If you were a front third player for Melbourne Victory and you heard your coach say that you lacked quality, what would your reaction be?
I wouldn't be happy, that's for sure. And I don't think it will instill confidence in his team to do it better next week. That's the other thing. It's not going to help the situation.
And the last thing there, I think if Melbourne Victory go and lose to Perth Glory this weekend, or it's a 0-0 draw, then that's a massive, massive statement of what they're trying to produce there.
Yeah, that's right.
Agree. Huge game Friday night. Another one is Newcastle versus Sydney FC. Look, before we talk about Max Burgess, because he's sort of like in the spotlight of this game as well, just quickly on Alex Badolato.
Yeah.
Amazing performance on the weekend. I feel like we're just getting a little bit carried away though, because that might be the first time I've seen him take an A-League game by the scruff of the neck, and I've been waiting and watching for a little while, and I want to see more. But another opportunity for him in this game against Sydney FC to dominate. He's just come off, I guess, what we'd call a revenge game against one of his former teams in Melbourne Victory. I think they were only offering him, if he stayed there this season, 10, 15 minutes off the bench. So he's gone to Newcastle as a starting player and shown them, here's what you're missing out on. You should have seen this in me.
Yeah.
The same thing now for Max Burgess this week, who spent a lot of time at Sydney FC, and I personally couldn't understand why Sydney FC weren't prepared to make more room for him in their setup. And I think, obviously, Mark Milligan has seen a quality player with some attributes that he wants at the heart of his team and has given him basically the steering wheel there. Yeah. And so far, so good for Maxi Burgess. But, boys, what do you think? Like, what will he be feeling, first of all, against Sydney FC? He will be absolutely burning this week to make sure that he's shown to his old club what Badolato just did to his.
And I think particularly to his old coach, who he probably didn't get the opportunities to play that he thought he maybe deserved. But I think it's always interesting as well as playing against your friends, because these Sydney FC players, I'm sure he's still friends with all of them. They know exactly what to expect from Max Burgess in this game. They know what he's good at. They probably know how they think they can nullify him, but it's always an interesting dynamic watching that unfold. But you do see this in the A-League a lot.
Yeah,
because
you do.
So many players have had, various clubs and end up playing against their former club at some point. So it's not something that we haven't seen that often, and I think that for him, he'll just be focused on doing his job.
The adrenaline's going to be there. He's just got to be able to focus that energy. And as any young player, that's why I think it's going to be great him working with Mark Milligan. He knows how to channel it by the looks of it. All these players, anyone in that midfield system can go forward and score goals. They're given that licence to get forward. I just think at Sydney FC, and it's the same thing with Badolato, we can say, oh, they've missed out on this great player. But at that time, it wasn't suited for that coach, for the system, for the team. Now at Newcastle Jets, he's thriving. He will do well to stick around at Newcastle and work with someone like Millsy and Nick Stavroulakis that will bring out the best in him.
Yeah, I think this game's looming as a cracking game. I think really open, offensive game. I think the way Newcastle play, looking to kind of play through lines in the midfield, really technical players, there's fine margins. And you could see against Victory, when it didn't come off, they were very open at the back. So, Sydney FC will see some opportunities to exploit, but Newcastle also showed that when they do it well, they're almost impossible to stop. So I think there's going to be goals in this game.
Yeah. Boys, Brisbane Roar, we're talking, well, both of your former clubs. Yeah. Probably a little bit unrecognisable to the Brisbane Roars that you played in, though, back in the day. I mean, we're probably going to be talking about the way they play most weeks this season, at least if it continues the way it started, at least through pre-season. The narrative has been they're the bully boys of the league, the villains, and then on the weekend, a little bit more of it against Wellington, although they cop some the other way, as we'll soon hear from Michael Valkanis. But Eric, what are you making of the way that Brisbane are approaching their football this season?
It's interesting because the dynamic that they're trying to, show. Well, this is definitely a red card, by the way, just quietly. But and that's and to be fair to Michael Valkanis, you can have a game plan. You can be physical and be in faces and be nasty. But if things like that don't go your way, then it has an impact on getting a 1-1 draw away at Wellington. Not a bad result after having a good result the first week. So my question is the other side: 1-0 penalty. 1 goal from Vidic over the top. 1 goal every game is not going to get you into the final series. Exactly. And I think the physicality, that's a great option away from home. But play that at Brisbane at Suncorp over 13 games. You can't be just winning second balls and being physical, you've got to dominate the ball a little bit more.
And I think they're the lowest in the league at the moment for passes, shots, crosses into the box, all these kind of offensive things. But
below Perth Glory, it should be said as well.
Yeah.
So we're talking bottom of the,
And I think, though, it's interesting. Like, I think, having that physicality can be in your favour, but it can't be your whole identity.
Yeah.
I think that, it can be an attribute that you have, but they need to show a lot more with the ball, like Eric said, if they're going to have a good season.
It's a platform, and they've got to build on that platform, I think.
Yeah.
Let's see if they do. But first, we'll hear from Michael Valkanis, who had a bit to say after that incident we just saw against Wellington.
And what I saw from the ground, it was that's a red card. But we're the physical team. I forget this. The word out there is we're the physical team, and sometimes maybe they forget to look at what's happening to us. I don't want to speak about that. That's not to blame, but it would have had a consequence on the game and the way they would have gone about what they would have had to do if they lost the player.
I love it when a coach says something and then says, but I don't want to speak about that.
And then cue rant.
I think the biggest test is going to be Friday night against City, a team that will play through a physical press. And then now let's see Brisbane Roar. Do they have that plan B? That's what I'm excited to see.
Also, the likes of Matt Leckie, it's not easy to be physical against players like him. Like they're a big team. They're physical. Alex Bross spoke about it last week that last year they had the most fouls and the most yellow cards in the league, Melbourne City. Yeah. So they're not going to shy away from it.
Yeah, interesting. Eric, you're going to take us through a little moment that we saw. I really enjoyed this game on Monday night, Macarthur versus Adelaide United. I thought Adelaide were supremely unlucky to not come away with at least a point from this game. Yep. But some of the football they played was absolutely outstanding.
I think Andrioli's got them playing a certain way, and this is one of the things I picked up, and it was that movement from, Duzel starts to play, Alagic moves in, Ryan Kitto makes a really smart run across here, Goody gets on the ball, and we saw this a couple of weeks ago with the first goal of the season. It was the second goal of the season with Alagic going forward. Johnny Yull there makes a great run, probably should have scored, but those sorts of triangles and movements, they're playing a lot of risky passes through the middle, and Tommy will tell you it's not very easy to play through the middle with players around you and still be able to rotate. Yeah. So I think at training they're doing things like, passing drills that have a thought process behind it. So on the weekend, they can produce moments like that. It was really good to watch.
Beautiful passage and a great save from Philip Curtis, I've got to say. But I think that as well, the one thing I love about Adelaide's play is the amount of width they have. Because you see a lot of teams in the A-League, they're too narrow when they attack, and I think it can be a little bit predictable and stagnant, but they're kind of old-fashioned in the fact that they have people on the sidelines, and it really stretches the defence and kind of creates more space for them to make those runs like they did on that occasion.
Yeah. Tommy, talk us through your team of the week, mate.
Yep. So my team of the week, obviously just saw one of the many saves he made just there, but Philip Curto, couldn't leave him out. And at the back, I've gone for Talbot, Hall, Ferreira and Wilmering. Especially Dan Hall and Ferreira, I thought obviously both had clean sheets, and 2 clean sheets in 2 games for Dan Hall. In the midfield, I've gone for Grozos, Badolato and Jonro. Badolato and Grozos, we spoke about the Newcastle Jets midfield earlier and how good they were. And Denny Jonro, another goal, another assist. He's been outstanding. What a start to the season he's had. In the front third, Joe Lolly makes it for the 2nd week in a row. Max Caputo again on the score sheet. And Lockie Brook, I thought he was really bright in his game for Auckland, and I think we'll see the best of him under Steve Corica.
Yeah. So only two retained?
Yep. Yeah, I think Joe Lolly and Denny Jonro, both teams have had ups and downs to the start of the season, but I think in their respective teams, they've been the outstanding players. Yeah. And, Joe Lolly, how many times have we seen it?
Yeah, he's been class.
He has, and I think he's just a cut above, and he's kind of picked up where he left off in previous seasons.
I probably would have put Girdwood Reich, who's been really good as well, alongside Dan Hall. I think he's been outstanding at the back. And Carlo Armiento, I just thought maybe a great little bench player to come off and score in the last 5 minutes of games. Yeah. But who else did I have in there? Verstraet's been good.
Yeah, he was in my team last week as well. So Will Dobson, he was one as well, I thought, for the Jets. I thought he was a little bit harsh maybe to miss out. So.
Yeah. So let's have a look ahead to the fixtures coming up in round 3. Obviously, we spoke about before a big Friday night game, Brisbane Roar, Melbourne City, doubleheader actually, because you got Perth Glory and Melbourne Victory there as well. Auckland versus Adelaide, that was a 4-4 draw last season, if you remember, and the Ferris wheel is back at Go Media Stadium for the kids, so enjoy that one. Macarthur versus Wanderers on Sunday. We've got the Western Sydney derby, and Macarthur wanting everyone or the fans there to rep their code, and by code they mean postcode, not code of football.
There
That
you
would
go.
obviously make no sense whatsoever. But so expect to see, a lot of people holding up, 2-1, whatever, postcodes, etc. In Western Sydney, repping your suburb, good on ya. And then the Brisbane Melbourne City game that we mentioned as well, Max Caputo, 6 goals in 4 games for club and country. Getting premature Socceroo shouts, I think. But, good to see young players backing it up season on season, actually building their careers nicely as well, which is fantastic. We're just going to hear now a little bit from Alex Badolato, who spoke to us in the off-season about his memories being a Sydney FC fan growing up.
Grew up a fan of the A-League. I remember always going to a lot of Sydney FC games, watching Del Piero. I used to love that sort of atmosphere. That was really great. To go there watching the games and then be able to play in the A-League is pretty surreal now. That's pretty crazy. Even like when you go out and people know who you are, that's pretty weird. People ask you to take photos or sign autographs. You're like, oh, like why do you want one with me? Like, just Alex. I was 16 and it was a derby, Sydney derby. I came on with about 10 minutes to go.
Just 16 years of age, Alex Badolato, who's on a 2-year scholarship deal. What a moment for the team.
I think it was first game of the season, and we had a 0-0 draw, and it was just crazy to play in that atmosphere and be on the field with some of those sorts of players. One moment was I got the ball, I think Ryan Grant tapped me and put me over the sideline. In a way, I was like okay, now you're on. The nerves are sort of gone. You're just in the game. It was sort of like welcome to the A-League, and I was like, okay, now I'm here.
Badolato out of absolutely nothing. Alex Badolato. That is an absolutely ridiculous strike from Alex Badolato. He has a hat-trick.
Hell of a goal. Big welcome to Narlene back at the desk to take us through what we missed over the weekend. What's cracking, man?
Well, yeah, let's kick it off with what Badolato mentioned there. That tackle against Ryan Grant served as his kind of welcome to the A-League's moment. You're with the big dogs now. Have we ever had a moment, a humbling moment of time early in your careers in football, Vince, you starting out in media, where you realise what you'd gotten yourself into? Yeah,
probably just on a weekly basis, because I started out interning with Gold Coast United / working as a journalist for Sport on the Gold Coast back then. So just the general vibe of Gold Coast United, and in particular weekly press conferences with Miron Bleiber was very much, all right, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
So
didn't learn that at a journalism school.
Mate, there's nothing. They can teach you nothing to prepare for that. Mate. Every week Miron would come up with something. Mate, there's a book in it one day. It's on my bucket list to write that book, trust me.
And speaking of Gold Coast, Eric, you made your debut against them.
I did. 0-0 draw.
Yeah.
It was a great experience playing against Jason Kalina. And I just remember him just berating his teammates and just being so negative. And I thought, if we can make this guy play his game like this and get under his skin, then we have arrived. I got man of the match that game, but I didn't get many man of the matches because we win games 3 or 4-0. But 0-0, I got man of the match my first game.
There you have it. Tommy, I feel like you're probably the most humble bloke in football, so I can't imagine you kick anymore.
I think at training with my first club at Brisbane Roar, there was Danny Tiardo, Craig Moore, Sash Olganovsky, and, going from, I was 16, but I was probably more physically about 13. So I was pretty small at that
still
time.
Are, so it's all good.
And, going into training, you can see there the tackles. That they were doing this at training, and I just remember going to training terrified. Every time I got the ball, I was just kicking it first time. Didn't want to dribble at them, but that was kind of my introduction to football.
How did your second game pan out?
I would rather not talk about that.
Too bad.
We have the high
Yeah, I got a red card. Obviously, that's not what you want to be doing in your second ever professional game. My only red card of my career. But
that was late, mate. That was you knew what you were doing. I think.
Channeling the current Brisbane Roar in my energy.
yeah, you're too early.
Well, good you got it out of your system.
Yeah, it's
game
good.
2.
It's good. It's true. Only way was up. So.
Exactly. And we'll talk about that up moment a little later on your first game. But now looking back to a bit of what happened on the weekend in that Sydney FC match at Leichhardt Oval, we saw one of their legends in Bobo do the coin toss, and it got us thinking of maybe some of the greatest Brazilians that have graced the competition. And Eric, you played with a pretty big name.
Well, we both have in Enrique, but I think if you look at Bobo, just the amount of goals that he scored,
prolific.
Record-breaking season. He was Golden Boot winner. He went to India and came back and still played at a really high level for Sydney FC. But my pick, Marlene, is Enrique, and you played with him as well. But scored the equaliser in the 2011 Grand Final, scored the winning penalty, and then 2014 Grand Final scored the winning goal as well. So I think in terms of clutch Brazilians, he was the best. No?
And also playing against him six-a-side at training, good luck. Like he was one of the best six-a-side players I've ever seen. I reckon, just slippery fish for a reason. That was his nickname.
It's class.
So.
I got two, and they both go back to my days as being like a teenager watching the A-League in Adelaide, being a big Adelaide United fan. Casio, for me, not just one of the best Brazilians to play in the league, but possibly one of the, well, not possibly, definitely one of the best left backs. You could make a case for him to be the best left back the league's ever seen. I thought he was unbelievable, and it's so good that some of his kids are now coming through the system as Aussies. The other one is Fred, man.
Yeah, he was clutch.
People, the streets won't forget Fred. He's one of those players back in the day. I'm talking like season 2, season 3, when the A-League was like enormous in a mainstream sense. If you just said Fred to anyone who followed Australian sport, they would know exactly who you're talking about and what you mean. This guy had the thing in a spell, man. Like, he was absolute magic back then, except for that grand final, which was one of the worst days of my life as a young South Australian. That was absolutely horrible. I went to the HQ nightclub. During the day, like they obviously had a big screen in there, and I went there and I watched it, and I was so pumped. I was like, we're in the grand final and all that. Then Ross Aloisi gets a red card, and then like, the goals keep coming.
You must hate Archie, then.
I bailed at half time, man. I was like,
oh wow,
screw this, man.
Wow. So do you have Fred over Cassio? If we forget
No,
that,
because I'm biased, so it's Cassio.
I think anyone not from Adelaide probably would, to be honest, but both excellent input into the league.
Cassio was in the league a little bit longer, though, whereas Fred was like early bang, and then he went to DC United.
And if he's a spot left back, you must be very good at your game.
It's
and
true.
He was very good.
It's true.
Best way to wrap up the show, a bit of a wholesome moment we saw on the weekend. 16-year-old Bessian Kutleshi made his debut for Melbourne City. They keep getting younger and younger.
They do.
Now, what is outstanding about this kid is when he actually comes on in the lead up to Zane Schreiber's goal, you can actually see him signalling to his teammates of him wanting to get the pass, but also pointing to where he wants the ball, and we know what happened next. That is incredible football IQ for essentially a child. So it kind of made me think of, confident youngsters on debut, and babyface Tommy came to mind. Take us through your first ever game.
Yeah,
young, man.
I was fortunate. I think I might have just been 17 or still 16. I can't remember how old I was, but yeah, I was scored a free kick on my debut, which was obviously a dream start. And then next week I got sent off. So it was the highs and lows of football very early.
I've got a good name for you. I think I saw him play for Northern Spirit as a 17-year-old, never looked out of place his whole career. It was Alex Wilkinson.
Oh, yeah.
True.
I think Wilco was an unbelievable player throughout his career, and he was ready for men's football at such a young age. He was class.
And there's a few names, like the likes of Matt Leckie, Ben Kanorowski from
Milligan
Newcastle.
as well.
He was.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time it's the youngsters who are physically mature as well, when they're young, that can probably make that transition a bit easier.
But what is young these days? It was 20 and 18, now it's 16 years old. So, imagine trying to play A-League at 16, 17. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's wild. And Vince, you mentioned Nesta bursting onto the scene. He's the obvious option. Any other youngsters that...
Well, I'd look at everything through a South Australian lens, because my pick is Matt Leckie, because I remember when he debuted as well, and I think he was playing for in the second tier in Victoria at the time, so not even like a top state league player, and he just comes in and strong, quick, on the ball, off the ball, and it's just like, who the hell is this kid? Yeah. Where did he come from, and why is he playing for us if he was playing in the Victorian State League too? Why did someone else not notice this guy? Yeah. Thank God. I just wish he came back to Adelaide after he came back from Europe and not went to Melbourne City.
Yeah.
They keep getting younger and younger, and looking forward to seeing more youngsters debut.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it will happen. Thanks, man. Good
Appreciate
fun,
it, bro.
I'm enjoying this.
Yeah,
me too.
This late
fun.
little,
It's the late show. I like it.
I want to see what you got in store next week. I'm looking forward to it.
Wait and see.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate it. Eric, great debut from you as well.
Cheers,
Yep.
guys.
Thanks to everyone for watching. We'll catch you next week.